Good evening, everybody. Yes, it is time for another stream. I'm still figuring out the stream formats for all my different streams. Sunday is the Slowdown Sunday. Monday has become the Creator Day, and I'm still a little baffled how it became that way. So let me know if you guys want Wednesday to become just the Character Spotlight stream. Comment down below. You can also just comment or vote in my Twitter polls, or X polls. I'm never going to accept that website as X. Just get used to that. I am never going to accept that website as X. But anyways, so you guys voted and you all wanted Thor Odinson. Honestly, it's not that I'm not a fan of Thor, it's just I haven't read that many Thor comics. You'll be surprised on how many of the big two heroes I have not actually read before. And Thor is one of them. And he is a very big favorite for a lot of, especially indie creators. So I guess I shouldn't have been too surprised, though Wonder Woman looked like she was going to win out this time, but whatever. Alright, so I've got two different Wikipedias-ish laid out. I've got the Marvel one, and I've got the Wikipedia one, but to give us a quick, 4-minute thing about who Thor is, what he's all about, blah, 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 with one of my favorite videos, or channels to reference for these, Comics Alliance. They make really good short videos to introduce you to certain comic things real quick. So let's start with this guy.
You might think you know Thor, but here are 12 facts you may not know about Marvel's God of Thunder. Thor first appeared in 1962's Journey into Mystery number 83, in a story by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby.
Is Journey into Mystery still going? Because I don't think I've seen a Journey into Mystery for a very long time. We'll look that up later.
Thor feature became so popular that Journey into Mystery was renamed The Mighty Thor as of 1966's issue
Oh, damn it. I guess I should have just waited for him to say something.
number 126. The version of Thor we know now was not the original version from Marvel Comics, or the first take on the character by Jack Kirby. A version of Thor appeared in 1951's Venus number 12 and 13, teaming up with the Roman goddess of that name.
Interesting. Oh, that was probably back when they were doing all sorts of weird stuff to try and find their foothold.
Kirby used Thor in two previous stories, one in 1942's Adventure Comics number 75 as a Sandman villain, and one in 1957's Tale of the Unexpected number 16.
That explains why Thor was in the Sandman series, the Gaiman Sandman series. That explains it. Okay.
While the Thor comics are inspired by the original Norse mythology, they deviate from the old stories in many ways. The mythological Thor has red hair and a beard, needs magic gloves and a belt in order to fully wield his hammer, and can only fly by means of a chariot pulled by magical goats. In the earliest comics, Larry Lieber gave Thor's hammer a new name he made up, referring to it as the Uru Hammer. When it was pointed out that
the Uru Hammer? The Uru Hammer! Oh my god, that is the funniest crap ever. Ugh. Next, you're gonna tell me his other magical item is the Uwu cloak. That is so stupid. I'm glad they changed it to Mjolnir, because that sounds just so stupid.
The hammer already had a name from mythology. Uru was kept as the name of the metal that the hammer is made from, and the hammer was given its original name, Meow Meow. Among the most popular Thor supporting characters are the Warriors 3, who are not based on any existing mythological characters. Instead, Fandral the Dashing is based on Errol Flynn, Hogan the Grim was inspired by Charles Bronson, and Volstagg the Voluminous was heavily influenced by Shakespeare's most prolific character, Sir John Falstaff. Although these days Thor is pretty much his godly self all the time, in the past he has had a number of human secret identities, including Dr. Donald Blake, construction worker Sigurd Jarlsson, and a paramedic named Jake Olsen. Besides the son of Odin, a number of other people have worn the mantle of Thor, including horse-faced alien Beta Ray Bill.
That is clearly a dinosaur.
Documentary filmmaker Red Norval, Eric Masterson, who later became Thunderstrike, 26th century freedom fighter Dargo Couture, and most recently, Thor's former lover, Dr. Jane Foster. Thor's hammer Mjolnir.
The most controversial of the Thors, just because, not just because she's a chick, but more because she was a very persnickety person.
Mjolnir holds an enchantment stating that it can only be lifted by those who are worthy. Notable non-Thor wielders of the hammer include Captain America, Storm, the Awesome Android, Conan the Barbarian, Wonder Woman, and Superman. In one well-known story, Loki uses magic.
Wait, how the hell did Conan become worthy of it? You know what? Roll with it.
To transform Thor into a frog. He is able to turn himself into the Frog of Thunder and save the frogs of Central Park from an army of rats. In recent years, a new thunder-powered frog has appeared, known as Throg. For a few issues in the 90s, Thor ran around with no shirt on while he fought monsters, crime, and monster crime.
Well, like you do.
Then, out of the blue, he...
Yeah. The 90s were not kind to superhero fashion. Like, there was that one period in Wonder Woman where she was running around in bike shorts and a leather jacket. And it was weird for everyone.
started wearing this number with the straps, chains, and belly shirt. Fortunately, he was soon transported to another universe while trying to stop a giant evil Professor X monster, and we didn't have to look at that costume anymore. Despite what I just said, Thor has been the centerpiece of a ton of great comics. Don't believe me? Check out Thor number 101 to 179, Thor number 337 to 382, Thor the Mighty Avenger number 128, and Thor God of Thunder number 1 to 25, just for a start. You'll thank me for it. Although he is best known for being played by Captain Kirk's dad, the first film version of Thor to appear was in the 1988 TV movie The Incredible Hulk Returns, where he was played by Eric Allen Kramer, whose costume was a lot fuzzier than the traditional Thor togs. That's it for this episode of You Think You Know Comics. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Comics Alliance for more comic facts, and check out comicsalliance.com for more comic awesomeness.
Alright, so that's a good brief introduction. So let's start with Wikipedia, and then we'll get into the Marvel stats, because I noticed it when I scrolled down that the Marvel site has like stats for Thor. So, alright, Thor, stop it. Thor Odinson is a superhero appearing in American comic books published by Marvel Comics based on the god from Old Norse religion and mythology, Thor. It is kind of crazy that it used to be considered a religion. Like, Thor was a god you worshipped. It still blows my mind. Created by artist Jack Kirby, writer Stan Lee, and scripter Larry Lieber, the character first appeared in Journey into Mystery, number 83, 1962, and first received his own title with Thor, number 126, 1966. Thor is an adaptation of the deity of the same name from Norse mythology. We just got through that. Comic books featuring Thor have been published across several volumes since the character's introductions. Well, yeah, duh. Thor is one of the gods of Asgard and the son of the Asgardian king Odin. In addition to his Asgardian strength and its extended lifespan, Thor wields control over the weather, including rain and lightning. Oh, so he can do just flat-out storms. He also carries the enchanted hammer Mjolnir that enhances his abilities and grants him the ability to fly. Thor was first introduced as the alter ego of Surgeon Donald Blake, who acquired Thor's power which was later revealed to be a fabrication by Thor's father. Thor has since assumed other human identities and sometimes ruled as king of Asgard. Oh yeah, he was... I don't know where I was going through there. Sorry. It's been a long day. But it is kind of interesting that, because I know that Thor got banished for being too arrogant from Asgard, but I didn't know the whole godlike identity was just a thing created by Odin to, like, force Thor to be more humble. Alright, Thor's cast of supporting characters include his fellow Asgardians Odin, Sif, the Warriors 3, and Balder the Brave, as well as other allies such as Jane Foster, Beta Ray Bill, and Hercules. Thor's arch nemesis is his adoptive brother Loki. Thor is a founding member of the superhero team The Avengers, and has played a significant role in Marvel crossover events, including Avengers Disassembled, Siege, Fear Itself, The War of the Realms, Chris Hemsworth portrays the cinematic adaptation of Thor in Marvel's Cinematic Universe, first appearing in Thor. I liked the first Thor movie. I know a lot of people had some mixed feelings about the first Thor movie, and people definitely did not like the Thor Dark World movie, but I liked the first Thor movie. However, once we got to Thor Ragnarok, I did not like that movie. I liked the parts with Hela and her trying to take over Asgard, but I didn't like how they were basically trying to turn Thor into Star-Lord, because Thor is Thor. Thor is not Star-Lord. Star-Lord is his own thing, and Thor should never be Star-Lord. And then when Thor got Love and Thunder was coming out, and people were saying, oh, it took all the worst aspects of Ragnarok and turned it up to 11. It's like, yep, nope, I am not going to watch that shit. Like, I am sorry, I am not going to watch that. I have complicated feelings about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay. So let's get into the little blurb here. Publisher Marvel, of course. First appearance, Journey into Mystery. 3 creators, full name, Thor Odinson, species, Asgardian, place of origin, Asgard. Team affiliations, The Avengers, we went through the partnerships. Notable aliases, Donald Blake, Jake Olsen, Eric Masterson. Abilities, superhuman strength, speed, stamina, agility, durability, reflexes, healing, and longevity. I mean, he is a god after all. Weather manipulation, master hand-to-hand combat, Mjolnir grants, dimensional travel, and flight. Okay, so creation and premiere. Alright. Kirby developed Thor's visual design, and he had an interest in ancient mythology that lent itself to the character's creation and design. Bullfinch's mythology was also used as a reference during Thor's creation. Bullfinch's collection of fairy tales of myths and legends rewritten for a general readership. Okay, so it's specifically this book of mythology, because keep in mind, when it comes to Norse mythology, different books have slightly different variations of how the stories go. Alright, as the superhero comic became more popular, Marvel began replacing its previous comic book lines with superheroes. Thor first appeared... Alright. Like other superheroes created at the time, Thor usurped a comic book anthology that had previously been dictated to monster fiction. Thor arose from Lee's desire to create a superhero who was more powerful than the Hulk or the Fantastic Four. Lee, in 2002, described Thor's genesis early in the Marvel pantheon, following the creation of the Hulk. How do you make someone stronger than the strongest person? It finally came to me. Don't make him human. Make him a god. Yeah, sure. I decided readers were already pretty familiar with the Greek and Roman gods. It might be fun to delve into the old Norse legends. Besides, I pictured Norse gods looking like Vikings of old, with the flowing beards, horned helmets, and battle clubs. Journey into Mystery needed a shot in the arm, so I picked Thor to headline the book. After writing an outline depicting the story and the characters I had in mind, I asked my brother Larry to write the script because I didn't have time. It was only natural for me to assign the penciling to Jack Kirby. Alright, the idea of adapting Thor as a superhero was first developed when Lee and Kirby heard of Marvel being discussed as a 20th century mythology. Thor... So it's like, well, we're considered a mythology anyway, might as well have a god. Thor was well suited to be recreated as a superhero, as the mythological character already had an established supporting cast, superpowers, and sense of justice. At the time Thor was created, there were approximately 15 million Scandinavian Americans, and the United States had a general cultural awareness of historical Scandinavian culture through the idea of Vikings and Leif Erikson. A previous adaptation of Thor had first appeared... Oh, yeah. Alright, yeah. So there's a good general gist of the creation. So let's move over to the Marvel website where we get to check out his stats to see if he's powerful. I mean, yeah, he's powerful, but they legit have, like, stats here. No beer tonight, just LaCroix and a ginger beer that my boyfriend left over. Alright. So this is the official Marvel website, and we got Thor Odinson. Son of Odin, uses his mighty abilities as the god of thunder to protect his home, Asgard, and the planet Earth alike. Alright. In Comics Will Report, and here we have his stats. So, it looks like it's on a 0 to 7 scale. Durability, we got 6. Energy is 6. Fighting skills of 4. And intelligence a 2. I don't understand why he's considered a 2, because at least the versions I've seen of him, he's been, like, average intelligence. So, but 2 suggests he's below average, which, interesting. But anyway, speed 7 and strength 7. You guys in the audience, let me know if you agree with this rating scale. Biography. The very skies tremble in his presence. He commands the mythical hammer Mjolnir to protect Asgard and Earth. He is the son of Odin, Prince of Asgard. He is the god of thunder. He is Thor. Alright. So height. So Thor height is 6'6". Donald Blake is 5'7". Oh, Donald Blake is only 2 inches taller than me. Wait. Jesus! Thor is 640 pounds. How? What? Okay. And Donald Blake is 150 pounds. Oh, I'm heavier than him. I'm working on it. Gender, male. Eyes, blue. Hair, blonde. Alright. Universe. Shit ton of other aliases. Education. Thor, tutored by scholars of Asgard. Blake, MD. Place of origin, a cave in Norway. Very specific. Identity is secret. Known relatives. All that list. Alright, powers. Odin power, warrior's madness, berserker rage, superhero strength, superhuman durability, superhuman reflexes, superhuman control of elements, hand-to-hand combat, sword fighting. Group affiliation, Avengers, Heralds of Galactus, Council of Godheads, Asgardians. Okay. Alright, so let's start with the God of Thunder portion. Thor was born to be the king of the Asgardian gods, Odin Borson, and the earth goddess Gaia. He grew up in Asgard under Odin's tutelage and trained in his footsteps to one day lead Asgard. Besides Odin, his stepmother Frigga and his adoptive brother Loki are the only family he knows, alongside his best friends Sif, Balder, and the Warriors Three. Throughout his youth, Thor tested his limits on dangerous missions and became worthy of the Uru hammer Mjolnir. I cannot get over the fact that its original name was Uru. That is baffling to me. Using it to save Sif from the death goddess Hela. While the hammer wields destructive powers, it also has the power to build, and Thor also uses it to consecrate treaties and bless weddings. In Thor's coming of age, he fell through a portal and battled the demigod Hercules. Equal in strength, they fought until Zeus halted their encounter, sending Thor back to Asgard and wiping the memories of both warriors. During the 9th century, Thor spent some time on Earth, leading Vikings into battle. It was not until Thor's loyal Vikings attacked a Christian monastery that he turned his back on his followers, leaving Earth and spending centuries in Asgard. During his time in Asgard, Odin casted Thor into the mortal guise of Sigmund to retrieve the Rheingold ring from the dragon Fafnir. When Sigmund took away another's wife, Frigga compelled Odin to kill Thor. What the hell? That is some family drama right there. Okay, so he had Thor go into disguise as Sigmund. Rheingold. Okay, so we're talking about the real Sigmund took away another's wife. Frigga compelled Odin to kill Thor, but Thor survived as Sigmund's son, Siegfried. Huh? Odin succeeded at obtaining the Rheingold ring from Siegfried, then restored Thor to life without any memories of his former identities. How many times does Thor get his memory reset? Like, jeez! No wonder he's such a very stone-cold guy. When Thor's battle-hungry appetite led him to break a treaty between Asgard and the Frost Giants, Odin banished him to Earth as a lesson in humility in the form of Dr. Donald Blake. As a human, he had a limp and worked as a physician. When he was compelled by Odin to go to Norway, he came upon extraterrestrials known as the Cronans and fled into a cave. There he found a gnarled cane and used it to try and escape. He struck it against a rock and it became Mjolnir. The mallet then restored his memories and returned him to his former glory as the mighty god of thunder. That must be what that scene's all about. The cave is bathed in a blinding light, like a fiery bolt of lightning, and the ancient cane, it's changing shape. And I'm changing too. Can this really be happening, or am I going mad? No, it isn't mad. I can feel my body bursting with power. Power such I've never known. The cane, it has become a mighty hammer. And I have been transformed into... Wait, there are words inscribed on the hammer. Whomsoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. Thor, the legendary god of thunder, the mightiest warrior of all mythology. This is his hammer, and I am Thor. When Loki became a menace and deceived his brother Thor on Earth, Thor saw through his lies and banded together with Iron Man, the Hulk, Ant-Man, and the Wasp to found the Avengers. Alongside the Avengers, Thor is a leader, master hand-to-hand combat, and talented swordsman. Alright. Worthy warrior and weaponry. Thor, son of gods, has enhanced longevity, are augmented by the golden apples of Idun. He also possesses superhuman strength, speed, agility, durability, and immunity to most diseases. Thor's greatest weapon and closest ally is Mjolnir, an enchanted hammer forged from Aruru metal. That stupid name. Which has power over storms and can generate energy blasts known as anti-force. Thor uses his hammer to summon rain, wind, lightning, and thunder, though he has also been known to produce lightning from his hands. While Mjolnir can manipulate weather patterns, it extends godhood and many other abilities to its commander. When spun, the mallet can allow Thor to fly, hover, and even open portals to other dimensions and realms. When thrown, it acts as a sort of boomerang, destroying all things or beings in its path while returning to its owner. When Thor became unworthy of holding Mjolnir, he used Jabbern, a deadly war axe. Alright. Now we get to the fun part. Oh, that's what Hela looked like. Oh, interesting. She was purple. But maybe they made her green because, I don't know. Alright, enemies of the god. For those who sit above in shadow are a consortium of wicked gods that feed off the energies, resulting from Asgard's repeated destruction, which is known as Ragnarok, or the Twilight of the Gods. The consortium recreates Asgard after each Ragnarok, resulting in an endless loop of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Okay, so in the comics, Ragnarok is not necessarily the big doomsday as it was led to be in the movies. It's just the end part of the cycle. Okay. Hela, the goddess of death, is Thor's niece. Oh! Okay. Well, in the mythology, she was Thor's niece, but again, I don't read too many of the Thor comics. I know what I know from the movies, and in there, she was like his big sister-ish. Best known for stealing mortal souls. I think that's supposed to be Thor faces her, she scars him across the face. She also punishes him for releasing her souls and curses him so that he could not heal his injuries, but also not die. That's hellish. Alright. Loki, an Asgardian menace, forever seeks to sow chaos out of his jealousy towards his adoptive brother Thor. Whether he is trying to steal the golden apples of Indu or posing as Odin, he's rarely an ally. Well, nowadays he's more ally than villain, but that's just because Tumblerinas found Loki hot. Right. The Celestials are the omnipotent judges of all the gods, are limitless in their power, and often serve as foils to the Asgardian royalty. Carnia, the Norn queen, an ancestral Asgardian enemy, possesses powerful mystic talismans called Norn stones. Okay. These stones are semi-sentient and are known to refuse the commands of unworthy holders, just as Mjolnir does so. She has used these many times in her battles with the god of thunder. The Aeneid Egyptian Heliopolitan death god Seth wages war on the Asgardians and captures Odin, imprisoning him in his Black Pyramid. Once Thor rescues Odin, and Odin bests Seth in Asgard. That's an awkward sentence. Alright. Surtur, a fire demon, attacks Asgard so that he might claim the eternal flame and complete the forging of his sword Twilight. He proves to be a menace time and time again of Asgard and Earth, eternally stuck in a battle with Odin. The gods of Muspel also serve Surtur against the realm. Absorbing Man, Amora the Enchantress, Surg the Executioner, Ego the Living Planet, oh yeah, Ego, Demon Lord Mephisto, Magog, and Malekith the Accursed, the Dark Elf from Svartalfheim, are also known foes to Thor. Damn these Scandinavian names. Alright, allies, friends, family. Thor's allies include Odin Borson, his father and the king of the Asgardians, his mother and earth goddess Gaia, and his stepmother Frigga. His best friends include Sif, whom he has intermittent romances with, Balder and the Warriors Three, Fandral the Dashing, Hungung the Grim, and Volstagg the Enormous. I love how they don't even hide the fact that he's just fat. That's his characteristic. He's fat. The god Heimdall is the guardian of Asgard. He protects the Asgardian borders and the Bifrost, and is forever an ally to Thor. On Earth, Thor bands together with Iron Man, the Hulk, Ant-Man, and the Wasp to found the Avengers. Later, when the Hulk leaves, Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, joins the fold and becomes close friends with the god. We'll never be beaten, for we are the Avengers! It is so crazy that this is what Iron Man used to look like. I'm so used to his red and gold suit, but it's so crazy to know that he looked like that. He looks like a giant walkie-talkie. Alright. Beta Ray Bill, a warrior alien, bests Thor in battle one time. As a reward for his strength, Odin creates a new hammer known as Stormbreaker for Bill. Bill subsequently fights alongside Thor, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four during the engagement on Earth in the battle with Surtur. Eric Masterson, an acquaintance of one of Thor's secret identities, Sigurd Jarlsson, becomes bonded to Thor and acts as a guise for him. He occasionally gains control of the shared body and even takes the codename Thunderstrike. Oh, Eric Masterson is Thunderstrike. Okay. Jane Foster, a human nurse that Dom and Blake falls in love with, often finds herself wrapped up in Thor's orbit, whether romantically or as an ally. She also proves to be worthy of Mjolnir and even takes on the mantle of Thor, which we have said again, not very many people liked. Don't worry, we're going to get to a video soon. Okay. Rolling Thunder. Thor has traveled across the realms, battling all enemies of Asgard and Earth, including the death goddess Hela and the Olympian demigod Hercules. Though both Thor and Hercules fought on opposite sides during the Norwegian and Greek War in the year 1000, they eventually teamed up and remained friendly rivals. I think Hercules also exists in the DC universe. Yeah, Hercules exists in the DC universe too. How does that copyright work out? Okay. It was his time on Earth leading to the Vikings that began the Norwegian myth of the god of thunder. In one iteration of Asgard, Thor's thirst for battle led him to break an Asgardian treaty with the frost giants, leading Odin to punish him. Odin sent him to Earth as Dr. Donald Blake. When Blake discovered that he is the Norse god of thunder, known as Thor, and is reunited with Mjolnir, he chose to divide his time between his life as an ordinary human doctor and an immortal god. As Blake, he fell in love with the human Jane Foster. When he requested permission from Odin to marry her, Odin refused and told Thor he wasn't allowed to share his true identity with her. His affinity for Earth has caused many arguments and rifts between him and his father. Odin's like, "Damn it, I was hoping you would pick one of the Asgardian girls to marry." When Loki took advantage of his brother's love of Earth, Thor sought the help of Iron Man, the Hulk, Ant-Man, and the Wasp to ward off the Asgardian menace. His trickery led Thor and these superpowered individuals to found the superhero group known as the Avengers, okay? Balancing his dual lives, Thor continued to pursue Foster. Foster was granted temporary goddess status, but Odin required proof of her worth. He sent impossible Dang it, Odin! He set impossible tasks for her on Asgard, but she was unable to cope and returned to Earth, eventually marrying a man named Kenneth Kincaid. After this disappointing decision, Thor reunited with his friend Sif to share a romance. Yeah, I bet Thor was not too happy about that. Thor continued as Asgard's greatest defender, fighting off terrible foes such as... How much you want to bet, though, that Odin set up those impossible tasks just to be less as a prove yourself and more of just go away already? Thor continued as Asgard's greatest defender, fighting off terrible foes such as the evil Magog, who disguised himself as Odin. During his reign, he bested Thor along with his allies, the Warriors Three, but Thor ultimately defeated Magog. When Ragnarok threatened Asgard's demise, Roger Red Norville took up Thor's mantle, using his belt of strength and unique gauntlets to battle the Midgard serpent. He died in doing so, but helped the realm narrowly avoid Ragnarok. So, is Thor like a possessive entity? Because it seems like he can just like kind of sort of possess certain people if he wanted to. Like whoever wields the power of Thor, yeah, you get the power of Thor, but he kind of sort of takes over your body and life, kind of, sort of, not really. Because that's kind of what I'm getting here. Which is a very interesting concept. It's very similar to Shape the Changing Man, now that I think of it. Enemies and wars aside, family drama reigned supreme as the god learned late in life who his real birth mother was. While he was born in Asgard to Odin and raised by his stepmother Frigga, the earth goddess Gaia actually bore him. Thor, in his continued travels, encountered the alien Beta Ray Bill. Bill thought Thor to be a demon and seized Thor's hammer, proving himself worthy to wield it. Because they were so evenly matched, Odin created Stormbreaker, a new hammer to be used by Bill. Thor joined forces with Bill to help battle sons of Muspel, demons serving the fire demon Surtur that threatened Bill's people. It was just after this encounter that S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury helped Thor establish a new identity and helped encourage him to keep in touch with humanity as Sigurd Jarlsson, a construction worker. When the cast of Ancient Winters was unleashed on Earth, it ushered forth Surtur and the... Okay. we can go over all of Thor's accomplishments all we want, but all right. So I'll link this article in the description below if you want to read the rest of Thor's story. So, like I mentioned before, I'm more familiar with the movie Thor than the comic book Thor. Well, I found this video while searching for Thor stuff by Braden Alberti. The MCU's Thor is not Marvel's Thor, and I thought that would be a interesting view. So let's go ahead and watch this.
Thor, the Thunder God Avenger. Since the rise of the MCU, he's become a pretty well-known and well-liked household name. He's strong, he's cool, and his story is incredibly unique when compared to most other superheroes. However, in spite of his mainstream success, this character's cinematic presence has actually fallen pretty far from where his potential could have led him. It would seem that despite being a relatively reliable and consistent character throughout Marvel's comic run, the MCU creatives couldn't really pin down who they wanted this guy to be, and each of his movie appearances saw him getting pushed and pulled into all sorts of peculiar directions in order to try and keep him relevant. Let's take a look at Thor's entire MCU journey.
Yeah, I got this sense in the first movie that Chris Hemsworth wasn't entirely comfortable as Thor. Like, I don't think he was that comfortable playing Thor. And apparently he even had a hard time pronouncing Mjolnir. He was looking at the name, he's like, this is such a weird name. Can we change the pronunciation to something else? And the director's like, no, dude, you have to pronounce it Mjolnir. The fans are going to be pissed if you don't. And honestly, I was pissed when he, like, for the first few minutes of the film, he had the feathered helmet on, and then he immediately took it off and just refused to wear it for the rest of his time, which was disappointing. I think that's why people like the movie Judge Dredd, because the guy who played Judge Dredd insisted on wearing the helmet throughout the entire movie, which is exactly how Dredd would be. And I was kind of hoping they would do that for Thor too, but nope, guess not.
To examine why and how he turned out the way he did. Thor's first film was Thor, fittingly enough, and already there are several problems that will spread and grow long term. This film as a whole was mostly just okay all around. It's not the worst thing Marvel's ever made, but it's also not the best. A major issue with this one is that it comes off as rather uninspired. We get our first look at a live-action Asgard, and in order to portray this place as mythological and mighty, the filmmakers decided to paint everything gold. Gold is a well and good royal color, with some comic precedents. However, when it's all you get to look at because it's caked over everything, it quickly becomes off-putting.
Why is everything chrome? Everything is chrome in the future!
This place could greatly benefit from more of a blend with nature, along with other welcoming colors to help enhance the gold instead of drowning us out with it.
Yeah, why didn't they take some cues from Kirby's artwork? They could have worked. You don't have to completely stick with the gold thing.
Asgard is meant to be a heavenly paradise, but the look they went with comes off as very industrial and unhappy. The design of Asgard gets tweaked as the films go on, but it never truly reaches the full potential that it has. The frost giants are displayed as slightly larger blue dudes in generic monster makeup, but they could have been these terrifying colossal giants made up entirely of ice. Once again, the result is very far from where the potential could have led them. The Bifrost is shown to be a flat bridge with some twinkling lights, instead of an actual arcing rainbow that rests upon clouds.
I think that has more to do with the fact that nowadays the rainbow has a different meaning. And also, maybe they thought it would be too silly. I think that would have been it too. They thought the rainbow bridge would be too silly and too Care Bears. I mean, even though fans have just accepted it for decades, I guess they thought it would be too silly. Okay.
Thor and Loki fight, their godly powers are expressed by having their weapons just spark a bit when they clash. It's not horribly offensive, but it's just generic and lacking in fun and creativity. A fight between Thor and Loki should be endless entertainment because of how fun their powers are. Thor has incredible strength and can control lightning, but on top of that, he can also control the weather, which we don't really get to see in the films a whole lot. He can cast not only lightning, but also rainstorms and even tornadoes, amongst other things. Loki's powers are especially fun, given that he can do nearly anything that constitutes an illusion. I've already spoken about Loki in great detail in my Villain Problem series, so check that out if you haven't already. But the bottom line is that he has so many great and exciting powers powers that we pretty much never see in the movies, which is such a shame because his powers would be incredible to witness if brought to the big screen.
His powers, from what I understand, do get expanded upon in the Loki series. But the point still stands that why are we only seeing his powers about a decade after his first appearance? Like, that is so strange.
Thor 1 and the Avengers show the best betrayals of his scheming and mischief, but after that he just becomes a knife boy, and his illusion powers are never given the justice that they deserve. And on top of all these other issues, is that this film is our first look into Asgard, and our first chance to see a brand new world completely alien to our own, but yet we spend 90% of this movie in boring small town America. It's understandable if the budget was an issue, and this film was the first of many, so we can give them concessions if they make rookie mistakes. But a spade is still a spade, and a boring movie is still boring. Thor is a fantasy series. We watch it because we want to fantasize, not to see the same things that we wake up to every day. And even if the budget for this movie was tight, it was still larger than any single Lord of the Rings film, and those movies all looked far better, while keeping us immersed in Middle-earth the entire time. As far as the characters go, for the most
Yeah. It's like, what were you doing with that budget, buddy?
part, they're all pretty well casted, and the costumes are also fairly on point, and largely get better over time. Thor's helmet gets reduced to a cameo, but it tends to come and go in the comics anyway, so it's no big deal. It's just a little odd that they would introduce it, but not use it at all. As for Thor himself, Chris Hemsworth as an actor seemed to be a bit of a late bloomer, as it seems like he struggled a bit to give his character any personality for a long time, but that also could have been an issue created by the writers and directors that he was paired up with. The Asgardians in the film all speak in relatively plain English, but in the comics, the Asgardians all usually have a verbose, Shakespearean-like articulation, and Thor in particular is known for giving these great heroic speeches while using a fantastical and bizarre vocabulary, making almost everything he says exciting. Even his text bubbles are fancy. The earlier films made a decent attempt to utilize their unique verbiage.
This is my bargain, you mewling quim.
But by the time Age of Ultron rolls around, the writers have pretty much given up and just reduced Thor to millennial speak.
Rock giants crumble under the blow of the mighty Mjolnir.
That was what I was about to say. Like, even in the old Avengers cartoon, Thor had a very grandiose way of speaking, which set him apart from everyone else. And that's particularly why I hated Thor Ragnarok, because he sounded like me. And I don't want Thor to sound like me.
I fear this brute won't be as obliging.
Stay thy hand, Hela! We shall retrieve the Hulk!
We? The Hulk's fists have addled your mind, Thunderer.
Fight with me, brother! Or die alone!
You soulless machine! How dare you strike the son of Odin!
Hear me, Collectors. I am Thor the Thunderer, son of Odin, Prince of Asgard. But today, above all things, I am an Avenger, and this world is under my protection.
Just gonna pop out for a moment, pick up the kids, kill the bad guy, and then come straight back.
This could have also been an understandably difficult part to act out, as Thor is a bit of a contradiction within the MCU, as he is meant to be a god.
We are not gods.
Okay, godlike being that has lived for thousands of years and has gained experience and wisdom in that time that allows him to wield his legendary hammer. But yet, this is meant to be an origin film, so Thor acts like an out-of-character child with no true life experience so that he can grow and learn on the hero's journey arc. While the irony of an immortal being having something to learn from a human role model is captivating, the writers seem to lean too hard on making him a young student and forgot that he is meant to have lived several lifetimes already. I think a better origin story would take place entirely on Asgard, several millennia before the modern age, in which we see a young Thor go on several Herculean-like trials in order to earn the worthiness of his hammer for the first time, then save his arrival to
Pshaw! The people don't want to see an epic fantasy movie. They want to see a fun little superhero origin story. Pshaw!
Earth for the Avengers. This would allow us to spend more time seeing the foreign realms of Asgard, and would let us get a better attachment to its characters. However, if you're going to make this an Earth-centric story, then more effort needs to be spent on giving Thor a bigger and more distinct personality. It should be clear that even though we're in small-town America, this character is being plucked straight from a fantasy series and is definitely a fish out of water. Aside from throwing a cup, the guy is rather soft-spoken and, well, normal. for lack of a better term. Even after losing his powers, he should still maintain the big personality and wild vocabulary befitting the Prince of Asgard. Don't get me wrong, the film does make an effort to do this. It's just that the execution was simply lacking compared to what could have been. That's a criticism you're going to hear a lot in this breakdown.
Well, what are you waiting for?
I don't know, something amazing, I guess.
They also retconned Jane Foster into being some expert scientist, which I would say is ultimately a change for the worse, because for one, there's like a trillion Marvel scientists, and it's getting a little overcrowded in this world, so we could benefit from some diversity in occupation. But also, Jane used to basically just be an average nurse, which became compelling due to the unlikely nature of her relationship with Thor. It's captivating to think about how an eons-old thunder god could manage to be swooned by what seems to be a rather unremarkable mortal woman.
You have no powers, no armor, no weapons. And yet I saw you risk your life to help the wounded. Why?
Because they needed my help, so I helped them. I'm a paramedic, it's what I do. I'm Jane Foster.
If you changed Jane...
Yeah, that's another reason why I despise girl boss characters. They basically turned Jane Foster into a girl boss character, especially when she became Thor. And thing is, she had a character before... But because we gotta make all the female characters girl boss now, she lost her main characteristic. She lost everything that made her her. It is frustrating.
To be more special in a way that would make her more likely to encounter someone like Thor, then that's sort of missing the point. We're going to talk about each of these human characters in greater detail, but we'll do that more towards the end. One change that was better though, was that in the comics, classic Thor was actually just a normal man named Donald Blake, who would pose as Thor because he came into possession of Thor's hammer, with the real Thor stepping in to take over later on. The movies just skipped over Donald Blake in favor of using the real Thor right away. That change was a better one because it's more straightforward, and the real Thor is more interesting than Donald Blake anyway. Sorry, Donald. And one last note before we move on to the next film, I just want to point out how absurd it was that they destroyed the Bifrost and acted like Thor would be trapped in Asgard forever, when everybody knows that he'll be back on Earth within the next installment. Like, have some foresight, people. The reasoning for his return wasn't even that good.
With the Bifrost gone, how much dark energy did the All-Father have to muster to conjure you here?
And they just fixed the Bifrost off screen anyway. If you're not willing to commit to breaking this thing, then just don't do it and spare us the fake drama. On to the Avengers, where Thor's role was rather small, but was used very well. His fights with Iron Man and Hulk were amazing, his relationship with Loki was well developed, and man, his cape had the best flow the human eye has ever gazed upon. That thing was glorious, and I wish they had kept it forever. His personality is still nitpick worthy though. They offered us small glimpses at his potential here and there, but it was never quite satisfying enough. This guy should have a ton of presence, and normal people should be in awe whenever he's in the room. Give him big speeches, big war cries, bigger words, and everything else that entails. The personality he was given wasn't bad per se, it just left so much to be desired. These issues persisted in Thor: The Dark World, as that film presents us with arguably the most boring installment within the MCU. I've already talked about Curse and Malekith to death in my villain series, so again, check out those videos if you haven't already. But on top of these two, Thor himself looks great, but man, his personality is just so dull.
Jane, I fought to protect you from the dangers of my world, but I was wrong. I was a fool. I believe that fate brought us together.
The aesthetic of Asgard was also tweaked to be more sci-fi this time around, which is mind-boggling because that makes it even more basic. Like, guys, what are we doing here? This isn't Guardians of the Galaxy, this isn't Iron Man, this isn't sci-fi, this is a fantasy movie. Get rid of the spaceships and the lasers, and to make the setting more magical and mythological, have them sail across the sky in an enchanted boat. Or
I think Marvel is just too afraid of being sincere. Maybe they're afraid of being sincere because sincerity is mock-worthy. However, screw that. Like, why do you care if some people will make fun of it being a fantasy series? Just roll with it. No, like, Lord of the Rings just went full ham on being fantasy. So why do we have to coolify the fantasy series, even though it could have been cool enough on its own? Maybe it's because they ultimately wanted the MCU to be sci-fi, so they had to change the Thor universe to be more sci-fi.
or with a winged horse. Don't use guns, use staffs and spells. The entire appeal of the MCU is seeing wildly different people from wildly different backgrounds come together. When you make their backgrounds very similar, it's a lot less fun when they come together. The MCU already has more than enough well-established sci-fi. Let's show the people something they've never seen before. Also, it's worth mentioning that Game of Thrones was white hot around this time, so it's not like fantasy was unpopular or anything. The Thor movies could have easily tapped into this massive Ice and Fire audience had they played their cards right. One of Thor's friends got recast in this one, but he was so unimpactful that I'm pretty sure most people didn't even notice. Jane and friends are back, and they're doing more generic sci-fi mumbo-jumbo, but we've seen similar things in more exciting forms in other Marvel movies, so seeing it here just comes off as repetitive and unexciting. In doing research for this video, I actually stumbled upon an excerpt from the Dark World's Wikipedia page, which suggests that they actually were going for a Game of Thrones style dark fantasy Viking epic. And upon discovering this, I have to wonder just how much crack did they smoke to make them think that turning dark elves into literal stormtroopers that chase around Darcy and her doofy boyfriend is anything remotely close to anything they described here. It's almost...
Again, I think Marvel is just a little too afraid to do that because they wanted sci-fi universe, not fantasy universe.
Almost the exact opposite. Dark, Viking, Game of Thrones. Aside from Loki, Darcy is the only character with any notable personality in this film. Unfortunately, said personality is to be as irritating as possible.
Oh, hello.
So, I show up to work at the lab / your mom's house, fully expecting you to be moping around in your pajamas, eating ice cream and obsessing about you know who. But you're not. You're wearing lady clothes? You haven't showered, didn't you? You smell good.
Is there a point to all this?
And speaking of Loki, he pretty much carries this film for as long as he's around. If only he got to use his powers, he could carry it even harder. I'm gonna keep hammering down the point about Loki's powers whenever it's relevant, because Marvel is actively shooting itself in the foot every time they don't use them. His powers are such a fun concept that continuously get completely wasted. Knife, boring. Illusion, fun. Loki's role here is also stunted by his terrible use in Ragnarok, but we'll get to that in a sec. And to touch on the god situation real quick,
we are not gods.
In the comics, the origins of Asgard are somewhat messy and full of retcons, but it's largely understood that Odin created the first humans, and that is that. I tried to find the reason why the Dark World made this change, but I couldn't find a definitive answer, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming this was done to make these films more approachable to the religious crowds. But if that's the reason, I feel that it was a rather unnecessary change, because for one, the comics are already well received, and two, and I'm saying this as a Catholic, you can indulge in stories of mythology and fantasy that don't necessarily line up with explicit church history, as long as they can still serve as an allegory for teaching about good morals and virtues, which Thor...
Yeah, I've, like, I follow a lot of religious people on Twitter, and a good chunk of them still like Thor. They're fine with the fact that in the Marvel Universe he's a god. So it's a little strange that they want to walk that back.
Thor's stories already heavily do, so you should be cool on that front. Don't be afraid to let these characters be who they are. By making Odin say this line, the Asgardians came off as much less important, with them instead being these just kind of weird aliens. It's like Piccolo all over again.
I liked it better when I was a demon.
So now it's time to talk about Age of Ultron. PU, what a stinky movie. Thor's role here is no exception. His main role in this one is to go undercover in order to go on a vision quest. Get it? Because vision? It's like clever or something. And now is a good time to point out that it is super weird to see Thor in human clothing. It's not necessarily bad, it's just something that you would pretty much never see in the comics. It would be like if Lady Galadriel wore battle armor. It just doesn't fit. Anyhow, this vision quest just feels like the writers were struggling to give Thor something to do in this one. The quest itself is one of the more boring moments of the film, as there isn't much substance behind it. It's basically just a glorified Easter basket that suggests that Thanos will show up at some point. This is information that we already knew, and it has no bearing on this current film. All this film really gets from it is just having Thor turn on Vision, the character, which is something that the other Avengers were already working on.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's the point? Thor's fight scenes aren't really as good as they were in the first Avengers film, and like the first film, we get small glimpses of what a better Thor personality could look like. However, Joss Whedon's writing style is too sarcastic and subversive to allow his character to just be himself.
I am Thor, son of Odin, and as long as there is life in my breast, I am running out of things to say. Are you ready?
We could have had great speeches, but instead we get out of character jokes.
Because comedy.
It's difficult to say what we should have done differently with Thor instead of this useless quest, but that would involve changing major plot points within this film, so maybe we'll save that for a separate Age of Ultron focused video. If you at home have any suggestions for what changes they should have made, feel free to leave a comment. The next movie appearance after Ultron is another solo film, but we do see him somewhere else first that will forever change Thor's presence within the MCU.
I guess I'm just taking a break. We had this really cool adventure saving Earth, and I was pretty happy. Anyway, so I needed some me time, and I came to Australia, and that's when I moved in with Daryl.
Hello.
Daryl here is helping me craft an electronic letter I'm writing to Captain America and Iron Man. There seems to be something very intense going on between them, and I want to offer my help, my services. Mjolnir over here taking a nap.
Doesn't know how to get in touch with you.
I don't have a phone.
He doesn't have a phone.
Send a raven.
It's settled.
We're getting a servant.
These YouTube videos were cute and seemed like harmless fun at the time. However, it would appear that these videos caught on behind the scenes, and so the era of boring.
I mean, it is kind of cute, but they're also really cringe, and when I see them, it's like, okay, that's where it came from.
Thor is over, and the era of YouTuber Thor has begun. Enter Ragnarok. Now I understand that there are many people out there who enjoy this movie, but let's be very clear about what this is. This is not a Marvel film. This is not a Thor film, nor is it a Hulk film. This is a Taika Waititi film.
Fuck off.
The Thor from past films is pretty much gone now, and has been replaced by Chris Hemsworth doing his best comedy routine.
Please, kind sir, do not cut my hair. No! No! We know each other. He's a friend from work. Get help! Help him! That's what.
Alongside him is a sad excuse for Valkyrie, a once respected and revered Asgardian warrior, now portrayed as a drunken idiot by an actress who I can only presume got this job because she is...
lesbian! But yeah, that was what I was talking about earlier. I did not like how they did Thor in this movie.
good friends with the director. We also see the return of Odin, who just immediately dies. For some reason.
That's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
He is by far Asgard's greatest defender and one of the most powerful beings within this universe. But sure, I guess he can just die a quiet death on Earth for no other reason than the plot just wanted him gone. Because that's totally justifiable and satisfying. It's not like Odin's death would spell ruin for Asgard, a place which has many enemies that are constantly seeking to take it down. Yeah, I'm sure they would be totally respectful and understanding when they learn that Asgard just lost its most powerful ruler and defender. We also get the return of Loki, who in the last film was set up to steal the rule of Asgard and his biggest betrayal against Thor yet. However, that's not subversive or funny enough, so Loki's plan is instantly undone with zero consequences, and he continues down the arc of becoming a hero.
Again, because the Tumblerinas think he's hot.
As if all of his actions within the last movie weren't all a big deception. That is some boring, lame shit. And this is all far removed from what Marvel's Loki would have behaved like. That guy was nothing close to being a hero nor an anti-hero. Comic Loki was the god of mischief and evil. Where's the evil? Where's the mischief even? This isn't Loki, this is just Tom. The Warriors 3. They were never the most developed or interesting side characters, but they were well established as Thor's closest friends. Then they each got quick and unceremonious deaths as if they didn't matter at all.
Go back to whatever cave you crept out of, you evil demoness.
Cool. Thanks, Taika. I'm glad we wasted so much screen time on them in the past, just for them to go out like this. By the way, where's Balder? You guys know about Balder, right? Thor's other brother? This guy is a very relevant character to Thor's story. Someone who used to be so prominent that he would rule Asgard when Odin and Thor were out of commission. But in the movies, he just never shows up. In fact, this film severely hinders his chances of ever showing up, nor any other Asgardians who hadn't made an on-screen appearance yet.
Here's the funny thing, and I remember seeing this on DeviantArt when fan art came out for the Thor movies. The fans did include Balder in their fan artwork. They would make fan creations of him. So it's like the fans know he's supposed to be there, but they don't want to acknowledge him whatsoever, which is very weird.
such as the Enchantress, because this movie decided to put all the Asgardians in one tiny ship while their kingdom gets obliterated. In the comics, all of the Asgardians are portrayed as mighty and powerful beings, with many great warriors, that are all able to persistently defend Asgard from deadly invaders that are relentlessly at their doorstep. In this movie, they come off as no more competent than normal humans. They are like pathetic, helpless lemmings that need to be constantly babied and coddled lest they charge headfirst into their own demise. They will continue to be portrayed this way for the remainder of the MCU, and New Asgard will be no more relevant to the MCU than a third world country. Thor himself is no more helpless than his people, as he is incapable of defeating his villains, and has to resort to letting them fight each other. He spends this entire movie crying, doofing, and clowning about. He allows himself to be easily upstaged and defeated at every turn. He talks like a fool.
We know each other. He's a friend from work.
He acts like a fool.
Please, kind sir, do not cut my hair.
He doesn't resemble Thor in any way. He more closely resembles Chris. This film is a parody that for some reason was allowed to be made canon in the main timeline. It's a wannabe Guardians film that waters down the musical hilarity of those films by failing to understand that style becomes moot when it's oversaturated. The Guardians style also doesn't translate well to Thor at all, because the Guardians films are niche sci-fi that thrive off of exploring absurdity. The Thor films are supposed to be deep fantasy. Led Zeppelin is entirely inappropriate here. Can we not create a beautiful new fantasy theme in the same vein as Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones?
No. Because we said so.
I'll say it again, the appeal of the MCU is seeing wildly different characters from wildly different backgrounds come together in ways that complement each other's differences. If you write every character to be the same wacky sci-fi funny man, then you've devastated the appeal of seeing these characters interact with each other. Thor especially should have an easy time being distinguished from all other Marvel properties, because his world is so wildly different from anything else within the Marvel universe. Abandoning his uniqueness in favor of jamming him into the same box as everybody else is the death of creativity. This is part of an ongoing trend that I've noticed within Marvel, in that they find ideas that they like and stick to them relentlessly. And by they, I most likely mean Kevin. Here are some examples. Downey's Iron Man was a big hit, so Spider-Man was made to be just like him. The first Avengers had a decent amount of humor injected into it, which got a good reaction from audiences. So as a result, humor gets injected into everything whether it fits or it doesn't. The Guardians soundtrack was a success, so radio music got injected into everything.
Taste it there, num, eat it up.
It's not that they find out what works and repeat it, because there are many great elements to films like Iron Man and Winter Soldier that get left behind. It's more accurate to say that the trends that catch on in these films are whichever ones amuse Kevin the most. And while chasing certain trends that work could help maintain consistent success, there is an inherent problem with relying on this formula, in that it will inevitably make your ongoing franchise increasingly repetitive. A Thor film should be nothing like a Guardians film, which should be nothing like an Ant-Man film, which should be nothing like a Doctor Strange film, which should be nothing like a Spider-Man film. And yet...
And as long as there is life in my breast, I am running out of things to say. Are you ready?
What are you doing?
Dance off, bro. Me and you.
A mechanized organism designed only for kill.
Oh, MODOK. Oh, oh, I get it. It's an acronym. It's an acronym.
Hilariously derailing one-liner.
This problem irritates me to no end because it is entirely preventable. Marvel's century-long history should easily allow each of its solo films to all be completely alien to one another, with each still maintaining a respectably high...
Yeah, okay, why did they make Tony a drinker in the movies? Because he had a whole arc where he was an alcoholic and he had to learn to get off the booze. So why is he drinking in the films?
Critical reception. Instead of creating multiple interconnected franchises that are all well liked for their own individual reasons, they have created a fad. Kevin perfected his desired formula, which mainly consists of attractive people quipping around loads of CGI with a post-credit scene to tease the larger story. Unfortunately for him, people are getting bored of this formula after having seen it play out so many times. But since Kevin relies on this formula so heavily, his only solution to remedy the boredom is to exaggerate this formula to its highest extremes, to the point where the jokes, the steroids, and the VFX VFX artists are cracked out to their absolute limits. Thor Ragnarok is a perfect example of this formula being cranked up to 11. And speaking of Ragnarok, we can't have a proper discussion about it without mentioning the abysmal adaptation of the Hulk. I know we've ranted and raved about the Hulk in great detail in the past, but it's so bad here that it's worth repeating. Thor Ragnarok borrows many elements from the renowned Planet Hulk comic. Planet Hulk is a story where the Hulk gets betrayed by his former friends when they trick him into getting sent to an alien planet in a weakened state. Once there, he gets forced to fight as a gladiator, and during his time there, he steadily gains new allies and strength, while changing the hearts and minds of the planet's people, and inspiring them to revolt against the empire that rules over them, and thus eventually bringing about world peace, until he gets betrayed again. Planet Hulk is a great comic. It's also a comic that has nothing to do with Thor, aside from a brief cameo in a flashback, and the only result that comes from brute forcing Planet Hulk into a Thor movie is more repulsively wasted potential. The Hulk gets robbed of one of his best storylines, only for a bastardized, abridged version to take his place. Where Thor is the lead, but he acts nothing like Thor, the intense drama is replaced by cheap, lowbrow humor, and Hulk's allies become parodies of their former selves, and either don't interact with the Hulk at all, or never even show up on screen in the first place. To properly describe just how heavy of a departure this movie is, I'll try to explain it in a way that's more familiar to most people. By that I mean, I will describe the plot of Thor Ragnarok, but as if it were a sequel to The Dark Knight.
And here we go.
Alright, so I do agree with a good chunk of his points there. So I found 2 articles on the best Thor artists that you guys might find interesting. One is from CBR and the other is from Screen Rant. So we'll start with Screen Rant first. We'll go down the list. Guys, everybody knows that a comic is only... that the best part about a comic is the visuals. I'm losing track of my words. Alright. So, skipping the introduction. John Buscema. I mispronounced that, I know. The first artist to take on the character after Jack Kirby departed Marvel Comics, John Buscema's contributions to Thor lie in his choice to maintain the status quo. The artist could have completely upended the look and tone of the comics, yet stuck to the core tenets of the character's world while subtly adapting it to fit his sensibilities. I mean, he couldn't change Thor too much. Marvel had an in-house style for a very long time, so he couldn't change it that much. Though some might argue Buscema's partnership with writer Roy Thomas left the character in a stagnant state, it's important to recognize that the two solidified the canon which Lee and Kirby had laid down. Factor in some of the iconic stories Buscema penciled, such as The Day the Thunder Failed, and it's clear that the artist's work was foundational for future creative teams. Alright, we're on Friends. Having penciled the Thor comics during the late 80s, early 90s, Ron Franz's contribution to the book can be seen in the creation of characters like Eric Masterson and helping assemble the New Warriors. While the former character hasn't had a major appearance in the comics since the 90s, his stint as the God of Thunder is well regarded. Though none of Franz's characters are yet to be seen in the MCU, it does appear that his design for the characters of Thunderstrike has influenced one of Thor's new costumes in the film. Oh yeah, in Love and Thunder. It's fairly subtle, but the sleeveless leather jacket and ponytail clearly evoke Thunderstrike's unforgettable aesthetic. Brian Hitch. The only artist to have never drawn a Thor solo title, Brian Hitch's rendering of the character in the Ultimates is influential for the liberties it took to the character. It was the first time Thor had been rebooted for new readers, and Hitch's choice to do away with the cape and helmet is one that has gone on to influence other properties. The notable aspect of Hitch's artwork can be seen in the MCU. Thor's confrontation with the Hulk in the first Avengers movie draws inspiration from a similar fight in the Ultimates. Thor's look during this part of the movie even drops the cape. Most notably, Thor's current hammer in the films, Thunderstrike, is clearly derived from the battle axe version of Mjolnir that Thor wields in the Ultimates comic. Alright. Oliver Coppel. I'm gonna say Coppel. Having illustrated the character as part of several different creative teams, Oliver Coppel's most notable contribution to the God of Thunder can be seen in the chainmail that covers Thor's arms. Oh yeah, he does do it quite differently from everyone else. Alright. The choice to enhance the warrior-like aspect of Thor has been carried over by other artists in the comics and outright replicated in the MCU, where a bare-armed Thor is used sparingly while the chainmail is the standard. Beyond this aesthetic flourish, Coppel has helped refine the look of Asgard as it was transported to Earth. The decision to relocate the fabled realm of the gods allowed Coppel to contrast the fantasy of the series with a more grounded approach. More importantly, the plot point would go on for several years in the comics and eventually influence the creation of New Asgard in the MCU. Alright, Sal Buscema. Taking over from Walt Simmons, Sal Buscema brought a more traditional look to Thor's comics that emphasized the fantastical elements of the characters in favor of the sci-fi which Simmons had played with. Beyond this, Buscema also illustrated some of the best issues of Thor, such as The Gift of Death and Journey into Mystery. Perhaps the most remembered moment of Buscema's time as a penciler was when he helped introduce the gold and blue power armor into the series. So distinct is this design that few artists have gone back to it. Yet it hasn't stopped Taika Waititi from lifting the chess piece for the new Thor: Love and Thunder. Alright, Russell Dalterman. The first artist to draw Jane Foster as God of Thunder, Dalterman's influence can be seen in how he and writer Jason Aaron upended the character without angering fans. Reasonable ones. Oh, nice little jab there. Dalterman gave Jane just as much reverence as the other pencilers put into their illustrations of the Odinson, and this respect for the character is why readers stuck to the title. That's not what I heard, but okay. Another argument for Dalterman's influence can be found in his stylistic inclinations, deviating from the sacred painted tones of Asad Rebrick and the grounded approach taken by Oliver Coppel. Dalterman brought the comic book vibrancy that the title had been missing from the book for some time, a vibrancy that has been carried over by subsequent artists. In short, Dalterman brought the fun back to the book. Asad Rebrick. Taking cues from Alex Ross's painted comic covers, Asad Rebrick offers up some of the most elegant artwork for the God of Thunder. His pages are breathtaking and help to bring out the majesty of the Nine Realms. Juxtaposing the serenity of Rebrick's pages are the stories to which he has contributed. His work with Jason Aaron gave readers Gore the God Butcher, one of Thor's most brutal villains, and a character who has entrenched himself in the mythos despite only being around for a decade. With him finally making his MCU debut in Love and Thunder, only time will tell if he'll live up to his deadly comic counterpart. I'm getting the feeling that this article was written to promote Love and Thunder. Alright, Walt Simonson. As a writer and artist, Simonson had some of the best Thor comics under his belt. His name is synonymous with the God of Thunder, and his pencils gave new life to the character and his rogues gallery. Simonson may not have created the characters of Scourge, Surtur, and Hela, but when anyone thinks of those deities, it's usually because of what Simonson did with them during his run. And then there's Beta Ray Bill, perhaps the greatest character from Simonson's run on the book. Bill remains a quintessential part of Thor canon, one of a select few characters who garner just as much love as Thor. Of course, Jack Kirby. Having illustrated the character from 1962 to 1970, Jack Kirby remains one of the longest-running artists on the character, which he helped adapt for Marvel Comics. He's the man that designed Thor's iconic costume and the first to conceptualize Asgard, Hel, Jotunheim, and everything in between. Kirby could have kept the character strictly rooted in the realm of fantasy, but his choice to incorporate elements of science fiction proved key to the success of the comics. And it's this look that has continued to inspire artists to this day. Without Kirby, there wouldn't be a Rainbow Bridge, the Warriors 3, or the Destroyer. Without Kirby, Thor wouldn't be Thor. Yeah. Okay. So that was Screen Rant's list. Let me know what you guys think. I don't think this is ranked. I think this is more just 10 of the influential ones. Let's look at the CBR one, and if we see one that we didn't see on the previous list, we'll stop and read it. All right. Yep, got that. Keith Pallard drew a fantastical Asgard. Ooh, that does look fantastical. One of the crucial Marvel artists in the late 70s and early 80s, Keith Pollard had celebrated runs on titles such as The Fantastic Four, The Amazing Spider-Man, and Thor. Pollard is also talented as he worked on those 3 titles at the same time. Oh, wow, dang. Now retired from comics, Pollard also co-created The Black Cat. Pollard's run on Thor was from issue 281 to 320, with only a few single-issue breaks. His heavy shadowing and great monster work always saw such classic stories as Thor's battles with Firelord and his team-up with the Eternals, forever etching him as one of Thor's great artists. Alright. Fraz, we already got that one, right? Yeah, we already got him. Alright, John Romita Jr. has dynamic style. John Romita Jr. is part of comic book royalty, his father being the legendary artist John Romita Sr. However, the former's work stands on his own, having illustrated such well-regarded works as Frank Miller's The Man Without Fear and Mark Millar's Kick-Ass. With writer Dan Jurgens, Romita helped relaunch Thor in 1998. Romita's heavy line work features stylized, hulking figures, cosmic level punches, and blasts of energy that practically shoot off this page. After a fallow period for the character, Romita gave the book what it needed and used his signature style to draw the God of Thunder in an exciting new way. Alright. Chris Sam drew a softer side of Thor. I don't think I like soft Thor. Like, Thor isn't supposed to be soft. He's supposed to be menacing and masculine. While still a relative newcomer to the industry, Samney quickly won acclaim. He received an Eisner Award for penciling inking Thor in 2013 and an Inkwell Award for his inks in 2021. Samney's style is softer than many mainstream comic artists, citing artist Ann Davis Jim Aparo and John Mandrake as influences on his style. Samney's primary Thor work was on a series entitled Thor the Mighty Avenger, an out-of-continuity series that explored Thor's early stories and relationships in a modern context. Samney inked and penciled the covers as well as the interiors using his unique emotional style to craft a retelling of Thor that reinvented the character for a modern audience while invoking the best of classic comics. And I remember that series, and I don't remember. I remember reading it and thinking, this should be a TV show. This shouldn't be a comic book. It didn't read like a comic book. Remember when I said that comic books have a flow to them? That comic did not have the flow of a comic book, if that makes sense. All right, Darman, you already got him. Yep, we got him too. Sad Rabrick, yeah, we got you. Jack Kirby, of course, and Walter Simpson. So, yeah, mostly the same with a few names. So, where should we start with Thor comics? So, I found this by Mad Dog Comics, who is going to give us some 10 comics to start with Thor, and hopefully there'll be some good ones.
If you're looking to start reading Thor, then you have definitely clicked on the right video to make yourself worthy. Woof woof! Hey guys, it's me Marcus, aka the Mad Dog, and we're back with another video. You guys voted for this one over on my Instagram, so we're going to be doing a where to start on Thor, and the first book that I want to recommend is Thor the Mighty Avenger.
Oh dang, he's getting right into it. Again, I just with this one. It's just
This is a fantastic short story that's set outside of continuity that is perfect for anybody that's never picked up a Thor book before. And this was also the first time that I got introduced to Chris Samney's art, and it's got an amazing style throughout that really gives this book a lot of personality. It also understands the silliness of Thor, which is what I really look for when I'm wanting to pick up one of his titles. Because he is a god that carries a magic hammer and talks like he's out of a Shakespearean play. Like, that isn't something that I can really take too seriously. And as well, what I've tried to do with this list is balance it with as many different titles as I can so that I can try and cater for whatever preference someone's got. So some of my suggestions may focus more about Thor being on Asgard or maybe over here on Earth, but this is one of those books that balances both of those settings really well, and it never feels like you're left too long without being at the other. I think this is a massively underrated book that a lot of people would enjoy, and if you're somebody who's maybe just finished watching a Thor movie and you're looking for your first Thor book that you can pick up, this is the one that I'd point to. But maybe you are somebody
maybe I'll reread it someday.
Who likes a bit of a longer series and you want to really get a good Thor experience, then I would recommend to you the often overlooked Heroes Return run. This was collected in 2 omnibuses, the first of which is quite cheap at the moment over at the channel sponsor Organic Price Books, and it's even cheaper if you use the code WOOFWOOF for $2 off your order, but you can use that code as many times as you like. They have also got some pre-orders for some upcoming Thor books as well, so it's worth checking it out and seeing if there's something that you can treat yourself to. But this one by Dan Jurgens for some reason is one that a lot of people don't talk about. But this is a title that I think a lot of...
I don't think that's because it's any good or bad. I think it's just because Heroes Return got royally screwed over by the Captain America run. Mostly because of Liefeld's artwork, which admittedly is not his best.
People shouldn't sleep on because of the fact that you really get a lot of time with the Odin's Son. But it's one of those books that really understands where the core of Thor is, and there's a lot of really funny moments in it that lighten up the situations that are happening. You also get exposed to quite a lot of his allies and also his rogues gallery, and even though it's got John Romita Jr. art for the most of it, it was when he was actually quite good at what he was doing. So it's one of those runs that doesn't really have a lot of baggage going into it, and even though towards the end there is a lot of event stuff that clogs it down like Avengers Disassembled, but for the most part this this is a really enjoyable, clean-cut Thor story that I think a lot of people would enjoy if they're looking for something that spanned for quite a few years. But it could be the case that you don't want something that's too short, you don't want something that's too long, well in that case I would recommend to you Thor by J. Michael Straczynski. You might be able to get it on something like Marvel Unlimited, and I do have to preface this by saying that it does unfortunately feel like it was cut short. But what you get before that is a really engaging and interesting Thor story where the dynamics of what makes that character are turned on its head. Asgard is now existing on Earth, Thor, who is out of the Marvel picture for quite a bit of time, has now been reborn, and for me that's probably the word that would summarise this book best, because it was about identity. What made an Asgardian Asgardian? What separated Thor from just being another member of Earth? And this is the Thor book that I'd recommend for people who maybe have a bit of an understanding about the Marvel universe, but you haven't delved into a Thor book just yet, because in terms of entertainment, this is one that I'd put quite high at the top of the list because of the fact that it's just got that amazing art by Oliver Copiel. I believe I pronounced that one wrong, but then again I pronounced most names incorrectly. And the reason why I'm including this on the list, because of the fact I know some people might think that it's not a good entry point, but it's because I feel like it's a great way to get started into mainline Thor continuity. From here you can read Kieran Gillen, which would then lead you into Matt Fraction, which leads you into Jason Aaron, and then that would catch you up to date and lead you into Donny Cates. But let's be honest, at the minute it's more than likely that Loki is a more popular character than Thor thanks to the MCU. In which case, why not pick yourself up a Loki title, something like Agent of Asgard, or even the Journey into Mystery run by Kieran Gillen. Both of those books tell a very different story, and I've already done a review of this book if you're interested in checking it out. This one's more integrated into the mainline Marvel universe, and it's set during the Marvel Now era, whereas the Kieran Gillen run is more based in the mythology and is for somebody who wants maybe a pure Thor story. But the fact of the matter is, if you know something about these characters, it's going to be easy for you to then transition into Thor with maybe one of the other titles after. And the thing with comics, and the reason why I did this series in the first place, is because of the fact that I want it to be as easy as possible for people to start reading comics no matter which characters they like. So there's no shame starting your Thor reading journey by getting into a Loki book, and I think those two that I've recommended.
Furry the Tambourine is out there. I'm curious. Okay, that's a doable price for a $6 delivery. Okay. Alright, yeah. I'll probably look it up on a pirate site later. I don't like buying comics where I just blindly don't know.
And I'm sure there's probably a couple of others, are great starting points for you. And my next recommendation's on the same string of logic, even though I'm very rarely logical, but it's other series that are about Thor's friends. So I know there was a series about Lady Sif, and there was also one about Warriors 3 that was written by Bill Willingham, who did Fables. So if you're somebody who's primarily read indie books before, and you're hoping that Thor's going to be the gateway character into the main Marvel universe, even though I've already done a where to start Marvel comics, which would probably help you as well, then why not try out one of these titles and kind of use it as a side door into this universe? I know a lot of people who have read Fables but have never touched a Thor book, so this would definitely be the one that I'd recommend. Or it might be the case that in the movies you thought that Lady Sif was a really cool character for the 5 minutes that she was in the movies, and you'd like to read a story that's more centered around that and then learn about Asgard and Thor that way. Even though it's not going to be as helpful as reading a straight up Thor story, it's still something that's going to ease you in. At the end of the day, and this is something that I've always tried to predicate in my videos, but there is no right or wrong way to get into comics. Next up, and another more recent run, but we've got Thor by Matt Fraction. It's weird, I feel like Thor might be one of the most underrated characters because of the fact that a lot of his individual series rarely get hyped up. There are a few, don't get me wrong, but stuff like Matt Fraction is one that often doesn't get talked about. I'm really excited that he is going to get an omnibus next year, and like I said, when you can pre-order it, make sure you get it from Organic Price Books. But this is one of those Thor stories that is primarily about Asgard and Asgardian culture, so it's something that would be more interesting for people who are into that. It does follow Siege, so maybe you need to know a little bit about that, but basically Asgard is back to being Asgard and it's no longer on Earth. But this is a really interesting one because of the fact that it explores more of the cosmic side of the Marvel universe, so you've got appearances from characters like the Silver Surfer and Galactus, and it really delves into the Norse mythology part of it. So if that's the type of Thor story that you're looking for, it might be worth researching what happened just before this and then picking up this book. But another more short Thor story that's pretty self-contained, and I'm not even sure if it was set in continuity because I read this pretty much when it was coming out in single issues, but it's Astonishing Thor. Now, you don't really hear this talked about as one of the best Thor stories of all time, but for something that's short and pretty quick to the chase, this is the one that I'd recommend for you. You get a nice little adventure, and it is based more around the Asgardian side of it, so again, if that's what you're looking for, this might be for you. But I guess this is pretty much the Thor equivalent of the sample that they give you when you go to an ice cream shop. You know, it's a little tester, you can try it out, you can see if it's for you before you jump into one of these longer, more storied runs. The art in it is also pretty interesting, and I think it's a style that we don't really see in too many other places, so if you're into something that's a bit more abstract, definitely look into this one. But considering the fact that the majority of the other runs that are on this list are quite long, I do think it's important to highlight these shorter stories that might be what you're looking for. Now, you're probably wondering why I haven't recommended a lot of the Silver Age Thor stories, and it's because for me personally, I don't think they are great for a new reader. Yeah, I do believe that every title has a perfect reader for it, so of course, if that's something that you know you're into, then definitely.
I will agree that it's like, when it comes to the Golden Age and Silver Age stuff, so much has changed about those characters since those times that when it comes to like, all right, where I want to get into this character as I know of him now, then starting at the Silver Age is probably not the best, because you're going to get a wildly different character than the person you are thinking of in your head right now. Like, Daredevil and Spider-Man had significant changes to their characters throughout the years. Or Iron Man had significant changes done to him throughout the years. So, it's like, kind of, but if you want to, like, see the roots of where that character came from, then yeah, go ahead and check out the Golden Age or the Silver Age. It can be interesting to see where these characters started, and there are some cool stories from the Golden and Silver Age. Don't get me wrong, the comic greats from back then, they did know a thing or two about storytelling. I'm just saying, when it comes to continuity, those comics are not exactly relevant anymore. I know, it's going to be a very hot take.
Check them out. And for me, the Thor continuity really begins with Walter Simonson. But Walter Simonson pretty much redefined Thor, and it's still the same character that we have today. Again, this is one of those stories that really balances Thor being on Earth with Thor being on Asgard, but this really solidified what Asgard is and what it means to Thor, and also what it means to the majority of the Marvel Universe. You've also got phenomenal art throughout, and I read this quite a few years ago, and it doesn't read like an older story. It's still got great pace. You've got stuff like the introduction of Beta Ray Bill, a great story with Loki, and you also get introduced to Throg. And I think whatever you're looking to get from a Thor story, it has it in at least some capacity in this book. And it really is one of those runs that's difficult to beat because of the fact that it paved the way for pretty much every other Thor story that came after it. Without this, it's not certain what Thor would be as a character, and I think it's one of those series that is definitely worth checking out. But maybe you are looking for a story that is pretty much about Thor, but with none of the continuity to weigh it down. In that case, I do have to recommend something like Ragnarok. This is published by IDW and written by Walter Simonson, who we just talked about. So pretty much the King of Thor told the ending to that story, but without the limitations that were put on him by Marvel. So it isn't technically a Marvel book, but it is still based in Asgardian culture, and I've only read the first volume so far, but I really enjoyed this. And this is pretty much the Thor equivalent of something like TMNT The Last Ronin, or the movie Logan, or Batman The Dark Knight Returns, and I think it's important to put this on the list because even though it probably is going to be a better read if you do know a lot about the mythology of Thor, it's still something that, because of the fact that it can't pick up on a lot of the stories that were made beforehand, it has to tell its own story but in a different way. So if you are looking for something that's got a bit more of a darker take on this universe without needing to know 50 or so years of Thor stories, then Ragnarok is probably going to be the best one for you.
Now, if you want a really dark Thor story, check out Garth Ennis's miniseries of Thor. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah. You got this Thor. If you really want a dark fantasy, dark Thor story, it's not good. I remember it not being very good. But it is dark, so if you want a dark story, check it out. But I'm just warning you, it's not very good.
Next up, and we've already touched on this a bit already, but it's other Avengers stories. If you're looking to get into Thor maybe because you don't know a lot about his actual backstory, then it might be best to see him in an ensemble team. And it might be the case that you've read a lot of Iron Man books or Captain America or Hulk, and this might be the best way for you to start reading Thor. If I had to recommend one Avengers book, it'd definitely be the one by Kurt Busiek, but you can also read some of the stuff from the Heroic Age by Brian Michael Bendis, or even go back to some of the classics like the Kree-Skrull War. There's a lot of great Thor moments that are scattered throughout the Avengers books, so I think if it is that you don't just want to jump in feet first, but you still want to at least experience some of the stories with this character, then having something like the Avengers is going to be the way for you. And in a similar way, my next recommendation is for people who want an Avengers story that isn't bogged down by older continuity, because of course, I do have to recommend the Ultimates. And it's interesting because Thor plays quite highly in my top 10 changes from the Ultimate Marvel Universe video, and yes, he isn't going to be the same character that you'd see in the mainline 616 continuity, but it doesn't mean that you can't learn about him there. Ultimate Marvel was my introduction into the Marvel Universe, and if it worked as a gateway for me to get into these characters, it can do the same for you. Beyond just that, the Ultimates is a highly entertaining story from Mark Millar, and I think Thor is one of those difficult characters to really do a where to start on, and considering those different situations that everyone might be in, but I do think that Ultimates is one of those go-to stories for any Avengers member that you're looking for. Actually, now I'm thinking of it, I should probably do a where to start Avengers. And if this video smashes a like target of 70 likes, I'll put it on the list. But because I understand that a lot of people might not want just one Thor book that they can read and then be done with the character, I would then next recommend Ultimate Thor. This is written by Jonathan Hickman, but at the same time it works kind of like a prequel to Thor. It's almost like an origin story for the character, even though he's about 15,000 years old. Actually, I think it's 1500. I know somebody's going to feel the need to correct me in the comments. But this was about 4 or so issues. It's really enjoyable, even if it isn't going to be something that's going to change the rest of your comic reading journey. But it allows you to have a bit of time with Thor as a character without him needing to be surrounded by the other members of the Ultimates. And it isn't really going to take you too much time to read this one, so maybe if it's the case that you do read the Ultimates and you really enjoy it, then you can jump into this one. Or if it is a case that you want to see if the Ultimates is for you, then there's not really too much to worry about if you start with Ultimate Thor. It might even be the case that you've read a few Jonathan Hickman books.
I don't know if I want to get into the Ultimates because I know that Ultimates 3 fell off a fucking cliff, and then you get the later contributions to the Ultimates where it's just awful for awful's sake, like the Wasp getting eaten alive by the Blob, Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch having an incest relationship, which ew, and apparently everybody isn't, and there's a cannibal.
Before, I recently reviewed East of West, and if it is that you like that
East of West, that I've heard of that one. It looks cool.
Type of storytelling, then maybe you could just jump into this book. I had to stop filming for a bit and it got really cold, but we're on to my last 2 picks, and admittedly there's 3 picks, but within 2 runs, if that makes sense. The first of which is the most recent run from Donny Cates. Now, Donny Cates is a name that you will probably need to know if you're going to get into the mainstream Marvel comics in the next coming years. He's made a big impression on every title that he's been on so far, and it seems like Thor is just him beginning to warm up. And even though, yes, you do need to know a little bit about the fallout of War of Realms, it does start you off from a fresh point for the Odin's Son. There's not too much baggage, there's just a slight bit of reference to it, and I think that the story that this is trying to craft is one that's really interesting to see unfold. That's why it's going to get a pick on this list. Even though I don't think it's the most optimal start point for a new reader, it is something that you can jump into if you want to get into single issues. It doesn't really feel like the case that there's too much that you need to know in order to be able to pick up the most recent issue from a comic shop, although except for the previous issues, I definitely recommend checking them out. But from what we've seen so far, and this is one of the only titles that I am actually reading in single issues, we've had a great story with Galactus, we've seen a great development with Thor, so yes, don't worry, if you did want to start with the most recent run of Thor, it is something that I think a new reader would be fairly okay with jumping into. But how could I make a where to start Thor list without including Thor by Jason Aaron? This isn't just one of the best Thor runs, but it's one of the best series that Marvel's ever printed. But I also think this is great because there's 2 different jumping on points within this same series, which shouldn't really come as a surprise considering the fact that this got relaunched watched about 4 different times. But you can start with the God of Thunder series, which I definitely recommend because of the fact that this has got the gore storyline. This is something that's going to be pivotal for the next Thor movie, so if it is that you're wanting to read some Thor stories to tide you over until then, this is the one that you need to pick up. But this God Butcher story arc is just phenomenal. It's something that I think anybody can read. And
yeah, the God Butcher arc I have heard so many things about. I've heard, like, it's a phenomenal one, and of course that's the one that ends up getting butchered, no pun intended, for Love and Thunder. Because comedy.
It also feels like it's set a bit outside of continuity. It is of course the beginning of Jason Aaron's 5 or so year run on this series, but it is telling its own story and it's so focused in on that, and at the same time it's just enjoyable start to finish. What's great about this as well is that throughout this list I've been trying to recommend books that may be a bit of a longer series and then other ones that might be a bit shorter. With the God of Thunder series you kind of get both. If it is that you only want a short Thor story, you can read this and then jump off, or if it is that you want to continue, you can go forward with it with the main Thor title, with Original Sin, all the way up until War of Realms and King Thor. So no matter what you're looking for in a Thor book, the answer is probably in this series. But as well, if it is that you wanted something that could maybe fit into some of the other Marvel stories, or maybe you've read something from the Marvel Now era, you can also pretty much jump in halfway through when Jane Foster manages to wield Mjolnir. I don't know, maybe it is the case that you want a female Thor, and if you don't just want to read one issue of What If from about 40 years ago, then Jason Aaron also covered this in part of his run. Even though I do think you'd be missing out massively by leaving.
And that's for saying feminism like it's a 4-letter word, you creep. Alright, we're just gonna skip that.
That you don't miss out on that. And as well, with an upcoming Thor movie, if you could please share this where you can. I know there must be at least one person who wants to know how they can read Thor. But that's the video for now, and until next time, just make sure that you stay safe, stay reading the best books that you can find, and stay mad all you dogs. Woof woof! See you at the next video.
Alright, so I think those are some good starting off points. I'm not sure if all of them are fantastic recommendations. What's this? Marvel villains were right. I know Punisher's not a villain. Oh, what the fuck? Go away. I wasn't calling on you. Yeah, the Punisher isn't a villain per se. He's more of an, I would consider him more of an anti-hero. Well, he is a villain depending on the story. So I think now's a good stopping point, because I was going to put on a few videos by Matt Draper, but I don't know if we would have enough time for that. So I do recommend his channel though. Matt Draper, he's the one who got me to read Kraven's Last Hunt. A very good series, by the way. Very good comic book. But anyways, I think I will end the stream now. If you enjoyed me doing a deep dive on characters, let me know. I will keep doing it. I am here to please. You can follow me on X at Heather_Veely. I'm also on Medium, and I will see you all in the next time. Thank you for staying.